Teresa Harris was sexually harassed, and this led to a very important case that went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court in 1993, and the court agreed, the Supreme Court agreed that she had been sexually harassed. It also agreed that she did not have to prove that she had suffered incredible humiliation. It just had to show that, in effect, given the circumstances, the conduct that was oppressing her was unlawful, illegitimate. What exactly took place? Well, for one thing, her boss at the trucking company for which she worked was constantly making remarks about her appearance. For another thing, her boss was constantly making sarcastic comments about her alleged behavior. For instance, when she managed to snag a new client for the business, he opined that she basically must have slept with the boss of that company in order to get the business. When she asked for a raise, he said, "Why don't we go to a motel and negotiate it?" When he wanted some coffee one time, he said, "Come get some coffee, honey. You can fish the change out of my pocket." And he did all sorts of other things which were just kind of stupid, obnoxious, or worse. And the thing that's so interesting to me, I suppose, maybe it's because of my legal learning, is I look at his behavior and I say, how could he not have known that what he was doing was boorish and possibly unlawful? The irony is, in a lot of these sexual harassment cases, one sees that the only person, in retrospect, who seems to have not known that what was taking place was unlawful was the idiot who was engaged in the behavior himself. Everyone else knew that it was wrong. It's kind of like a bald man who puts on a toupee and somehow thinks that he's fooled everyone. Well, I mean, everyone else in the world can see this is a $5 toupee that I'm wearing, and the only one who doesn't know seems to be me. Well, that's the same thing in these sexual harassment cases, and that's why it becomes very important for businesses to make sure that their supervisors and their employees and everyone else who deals with their business understands at least the basics of sexual harassment law and understands what to do if they feel aggrieved that they are being harassed, so that one, sexual harassment is far less likely to take place at that employment area, and secondly, that if it does begin to develop, the people that feel they are being harassed have some outlet, some way to go through the chain of command in the company and get some sort of recourse. What gets businesses in big, big trouble is not just a pattern and practice of discrimination or a pattern and practice in particular of harassment. It's the failure to have systems in place to try and prevent it, to try and detect it, and to try and weed it out and prevent it from happening in the future. That's when businesses end up facing spectacular judgments against them, because they've in effect condoned, even though they may not have directly supported, but they've condoned some form of discriminatory behavior. Now, sexual harassment is just one of many, many, many types of discrimination in the workplace. And there are numerous laws covering this. The idea for you, I suppose, is to search the internet, to search books, to find what you can about the basics of the law in this area. And there's so much out there that there's really no excuse for not learning at least the basics in this area. Sexual harassment law, you could not really find law in this area until approximately 1980. It has blossomed tremendously. Is it because sexual harassment has suddenly just grown out of all proportions in the last 20, 25 years? I don't think so. I think it's because the interpretation of the law has progressed, has moved much farther than it was back in the 60s or 70s. It's the same statutes, but the regulations and the case law and other developments have added much more to it. Yes, Congress has sometimes gotten in the act, but it's much more the courts, the administrators, and, frankly, private litigants and employers themselves that have furthered the law in this area.